It would be one amazing night.
From 56. On its way. It is off the goalpost. No good. You can hear the doink. Oh, man. Well, there it is. Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. It's David. Week 4 of the NFL was all about Belichick versus Brady and Brady versus Belichick, but there was a lot more to unpack from the week that was. As soon as the Rams were declared Super Bowl favorites, they got humbled at home by the Arizona Cardinals. After what was a brutal week to be a rookie QB, many of them shone in Week 4, with some even picking up their first win. The Jets and Giants getting their first wins on the same day the Yankees clinched a playoff berth is probably the most success New York sports fans will ever experience on the same day all year. And the Chargers, wow. They were so electric they managed to cause a lightning delay to an indoor stadium. So yes, while Patriots vs. Buccaneers was thoroughly entertaining and managed to live up to all the hype, there was a lot more to talk about from Week 4 than just that game, despite what you may have seen from First Take. If you like what you see here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a follow on social media. The first game we're revisiting is likely one that a lot of people didn't watch, unless you're a fan of the two teams. Lions vs. Bears was noteworthy due to Justin Fields getting his first career win and looking far more comfortable than he did against the Browns when he was under siege all game. But we're not going to focus on the Lions' defense and whether they were that bad or Fields was that good. The answer is always the Lions are that bad. Rather, we're going to look at the Lions' offense, and specifically their aggressive approach whenever they got into the red zone. They made two critical fourth down decisions that ended up costing them, going for it when they were down 14-0 and later on when it was a 10-point game. They received a lot of backlash for those decisions, but I'm here to applaud them for it. I agree that there's a time and place to be aggressive, and that you shouldn't go for it on fourth down just for the sake of it. But by committing to it and not deviating from it even when things went wrong, you're helping to create an identity. Even for playoff contenders, that's arguably the most important thing to have. Dan Campbell is going to have his ups and downs, especially with this shell of a roster. But ask any Lions fan if they'd rather have him right now or Matt Patricia. And I guarantee you nobody will be saying Matt Patricia. As for now, they're still in the beginning stages of a rebuild, so it's hard to criticize them too much. But the Lions' aggressiveness will pay off once they get better weapons. If you bought stock in the Denver Broncos, then shame on you. In their first real test of the season, they exposed themselves for what they truly are: snake oil salesmen. Beating the Giants, Jaguars, and Jets to begin the season is like the equivalent of beating 3 varsity teams. Yet Broncos fans had us believe that they were legit, that Teddy Bridgewater is the answer to Drew Lock, that their secondary will be the new no-fly zone. But against the Ravens, Denver's offense got stuck in mud. Their corners got burned, and they couldn't get past the Ravens' pass rush. Broncos fans did their team no favors, as you could hear boos when Drew Lock came in, replacing an injured Bridgewater. Blaming this on Lock, which was Broncos Twitter's first instinct, is oversimplifying things, since it's not like Bridgewater was lighting it up when he was in the game. It is true that the Broncos were banged up beyond Bridgewater, but it's hard to believe that they would have made the difference against a good Ravens team. And at a time like this, they need to show that they can overcome the adversity if they want to prove that they're for real. After all, look at their opponent. The Ravens lost their 2 starting running backs and Marcus Peters. They played Le'Veon Bell in this game, for crying out loud. But they didn't look any worse for wear. Now, it wasn't all bad for the Broncos. This run by Javonte Williams was utterly insane. But if they lose again to the Pittsburgh Steelers, you've got to start wondering how any of us ever convinced ourselves to believe in this team. No one should ever wish injury on one of their teammates, but for rookies, it can be the exact thing they need to seize on an opportunity. Just ask Tyrod Taylor. He was the Week 1 starter for both the Browns and the Chargers during Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert's rookie years. But after he suffered early season injuries, Mayfield and Herbert stepped in and won the starting job for good. Unfortunately for Jimmy G, his extensive injury history reared its ugly head once again during their contest against the Seattle Seahawks. Lance stepped in during the second half and almost brought the Niners all the way back. It's probably not indicative of how good or bad he'll be. He connected on a very long touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel, but that was more a product of the Seahawks' poor secondary than anything. But they won't know unless they continue to play him. I know I said last week that I don't blame the Niners for not going to Trey Lance yet. But now that he has this opportunity, They can't have it both ways. You traded up to draft this guy, and now you decide you want to play it safe with him? And for all intents and purposes, that's what the Niners are doing if they decide to go right back to Garoppolo when he recovers. It's understandable that they're scared of injuries after the season from hell that they had last year, but the best way to fix that would be to fire everyone on the medical staff. As it stands, the Niners are in the midst of a tough stretch where they have to play the Cardinals twice as well as the Rams. If you want to know what Trey Lance is all about, and in the process convince the fan base you made the right choice on draft day, then give Lance the keys and don't look back. On to the Belichick-Brady Bowl. I don't think it provided a definitive answer as to who was more important to the Pats dynasty. It's also not a discussion I want to participate in since that horse has been beaten to death. Now the last thing I want to do is question Belichick's decision making given his championship pedigree. But what was he thinking when he settled for a 56-yard field goal in the rain instead of going for it on 4th and short? It's all very baffling since he had the perfect game plan for Brady and the Bucs right up until that final call. If people are criticizing Dan Campbell and the Lions for being overly aggressive and going for it every time in the red zone, we should be allowed to question Belichick for this. I mean, Mac Jones was dealing, and he clearly never got distracted by all the hype coming into this contest. Belichick even went out of his way to show how much faith he had in the kid by cutting Cam Newton, so why wouldn't he trust him to pick up 3 yards for a first down? While the game wasn't an offensive shootout, due in large part to the weather, it was a high-level chess match. The Patriots did a great job of switching up their coverages to throw off Brady and forcing them to win the ground, while the Buccaneers excelled at stifling the run and making Mac Jones beat them with his arm. Both teams can walk away from this contest with their heads held high, but the Patriots could have easily been clear winners if Belichick had better decision-making. Last but not least, the Chargers are the new favorites in the AFC West. It may be a thunderous take, but this is an Overreactions video, so go big or go home. But by beating the Chiefs, the preseason favorites, then the undefeated Raiders in back-to-back weeks, they certainly are in the driver's seat, like Lightning McQueen. To be clear, they haven't been perfect. Against the Chiefs, penalties that were called, and ones that should have been called, almost did them in. And against the Raiders, they nearly took their foot off the gas after building a 21-0 lead at halftime. But they weathered the storm both times when they would have certainly lost those games under Anthony Lynn. It's one thing to gush about Justin Herbert, but his weapons have been electric all season. And their defense was stifling in the first half, only giving up 51 yards. And even when one of them commits a misstep, as Bosa did on the Raiders' final drive, someone else will come in and clean it up, which is what Derwin James did with his game-sealing interception. Capitalizing on the Raiders' missed field goal with the 10-play drive capped off by Eckler's TD run really struck me as to how far the Chargers have come. Under the previous regime, they either would have mismanaged the clock or committed a costly turnover. Lynn almost certainly wouldn't have had the guts to go for it on 4th and 2 on that drive. But as was the case against the Chiefs, LA's efficiency on 4th downs helped swing this in their favor. The fact that it was Jared Cook who made the conversion on a day when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were bottled up speaks to the Chargers' impressive depth. Are the Chargers Super Bowl contenders? It's too early to say, especially since we've seen better Chargers teams strike out in the playoffs. But from a neutral perspective, they've definitely been the most electrifying team to watch this season.